Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. Brent has been in the health and wellness industry since 1998 and an impassioned educator for nearly 10 years. Developing a presentation style that is clear and engaging, he's been focusing on optimizing evidence-based, skill-centric education for all human movement professionals. As a resource to industry giants from Shape Magazine, Town Sports International, Equinox, and the National Academy of Sports Medicine, known as NASM, Brent is grateful to affect thousands of lives every year as president and founder of the Brookbush Institute of Human Movement Science. Brent, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So I haven't mentioned this to you, but one of the reasons I actually got you on the show was I've just recently moved to New York and I got into a group that basically it's a whole group of fitness professionals in Manhattan. And not knowing who the gurus were, I actually went out and asked those people who I should interview. And your name came up as pretty much one of the most popular names. So I'm honored to have you on the show.
Thank you. I am one of the few, I hate that term guru, but yeah, I am one of the few gurus who actually lives in New York City. There's only a couple of us. Awesome. Most of the big names in health and wellness are like in the Midwest.
I've noticed. So I guess, Brent, where I'd like to start was with your personal journey of health and fitness and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty weird path, although not so weird for a New Yorker, I guess. You know, I started health and fitness being a really scrawny kid and wanting to get big and not be picked on and kind of that whole side of things. I started out at I think I started high school at 6'1", 140. That's really skinny. So, it took me all of my high school days to get up to, my current weight now of 220 to 225. So that kind of started me in it. And then personal training kind of came along as a way to support what was in my jazz career. I was a jazz trombone player, which is how I ended up in New York. I grew up in Las Vegas. My jazz trombone career got cut short because I injured a muscle in my face called my orbicularis. It actually ruptured during a rehearsal. And then so the personal training thing that I was doing as essentially my waitering job while I was in the performing arts became my full-time job. My passion for all of it, though, probably started when I started teaching, which I was listening to that intro. I got to update that intro. I've actually been teaching for, I think, almost 14 years now. That's when everything really started taking off for me. When I started training trainers for TSI, which is New York sports clubs, Philadelphia sports clubs, Washington sports clubs, that's when I kind of fell in love with the public speaking thing. I fell in love with the education thing. I started going back for my education and my degrees, and then one thing led to another. It was educator for New York sports clubs and then educator for Equinox. And then while I was with Equinox, I started having this idea for optimizing education, bringing education science into what we were doing, training trainers at that point. So I started the early seeds of what became the Brookbush Institute then. I then got picked up by the National Academy of Sports Medicine, taught their workshops for a while. I just recently actually resigned from NASM to, be full-time CEO for my company, which continues to grow and continues to push me to try to turn into the CEO that this company really deserves and needs to reach the mission that we're on.
Awesome. And what is that mission?
So we're trying to optimize education in human movement science, and that has a bunch of little parts to it. We're definitely really, really big on the delivery side of things. We do believe that there's a lot of smart people out there who, frankly, don't know how to teach. And that leads to a lot of confusion. It leads to a lot of very technical information that's not really broken down very well for somebody starting in the industry. There's a lot of stuff that gets miscommunicated. So you end up with a lot of things that sound contradictory that aren't. And then pushing that one step forward, when we really talk about education, I mean, we actually measure ourselves by, what are our students' retention rates? How much are they comprehending? How much are they actually applying on the floor? How are they doing on their exams? How much participation are they doing voluntarily on what is now our online education platform? We're real big on all of that side of stuff with scaffolding and lesson plan development and instructional design. And we're trying to bring that whole thing and make essentially students' lives easier, which is obviously the second part of it. Of course, it's the education science side, which is the student-centered learning or the evidence-based student-centered learning. We're also huge on technology. I think we could eliminate a lot of obstacles in the education front. We put these huge price tags and ginormous hurdles in the form of like 700-page textbooks and huge courses that have to be wolfed down all at once. And then we put a huge exam that may or may not have been written fairly at the end of it. I think all of that can be done away with thanks to online education. We can make things a lot more convenient, right? Like we're switching now, like one of our things is to go from more PC centric or Mac centric to more mobile centric. Like we're getting to a point now where more and more of our stuff is super, super user friendly on your phone. And I think that's super important. And of course, all of our education from the get-go has been very, very practical, which I think is something that is missed by even a lot of the large certification companies where, you open their books and it's like 120 pages of exercise phys. And you're like, man, I don't know why I need to know that the primary limiting enzyme of cardiovascular performance is phosphofructokinase. I have no idea what that actually does in my daily life of actually making programs for a client, patient, or athlete. Some of that stuff just doesn't make any sense when you look at it from, are we actually making people better at their jobs?
I like what you do in that you look at what job they need to do and then you work out what they need to know and how they need to teach that to their clients. So I love that approach. Just for the audience though, what do you actually teach? Is it human movement science and who is it for?
So human movement science kind of refers to like a body or a content center, like a body of content, right? That has to do with how the body moves optimally, how the body moves relative to dysfunction and impairment, right? And then how to get people out of dysfunction and impairment, which would be, on that rehab to corrective exercise spectrum. And then on the other side of it would be once you're optimizing movement, how do you load that system and program for continued performance? So it's very motion centric. And
so who are your main clients then? Who are you teaching?
Great question. So, human movement science is ubiquitous to a lot of fields, and we are very big on the integration of human movement professionals. So we don't really care which profession picks up our stuff, as long as they mind their scope of practice, right? Like we don't want personal trainers doing joint manipulations or, we don't want somebody with no experience training athletes to all of a sudden be doing, advanced plyometric activities with somebody. But the idea kind of is like, doesn't matter whether you're a personal trainer or a physical therapist. The idea is that you're going to optimize motion. I would say that the largest, if we're going to just talk business and numbers, the largest percentage of our membership on the website right now is personal trainers. But I think that has as much to do with the fact that I trained personal trainers for 14 years of my career as anything else. Physical therapists are our second fastest growing population. And then after that would be like physical therapy assistants and athletic trainers. And then kind of more towards the bottom of the list as far as numbers, not that we respect them any less, would be massage therapists. Athletic trainers are coming up. They'll get bigger in time, but they're still a pretty small part of our list. And then chiropractors.
And would these people all necessarily be doing the same courses or are they course specific?
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense to be course specific, right? Like we're all using the same tool. We're all going after the same thing. We're all working with the human body. So the idea that the physical therapist would practice different than the chiropractor is kind of ridiculous, right? Like, for example, let's say somebody has symptoms of low back pain. We know that through some assessment, they have lumbopelvic hip complex dysfunction. You're telling me that a physical therapist and a chiropractor should treat that differently? Because my thinking would be, how about we treat that optimally with whatever techniques are ideal for the situation?
I guess the only thing here is that a personal trainer may not be qualified to actually physically touch them and do anything like that, whereas a physiotherapist is. And so how much detail do you go into then? And do you sort of say, as a personal trainer, you wouldn't do this, but as a physiotherapist, you would?
Well, since our videos are on techniques, that actually becomes really easy. Like we never really have to make that division. So, for example, if I'm teaching joint manipulations, that's a joint manipulation video. It's not a video on here's how you address an anterior pelvic tilt. You do a joint manipulation. That doesn't happen.
Okay.
We have a course on what lumbopelvic hip complex dysfunction looks like, and that may range from anterior pelvic tilt all the way up to something more acute And then it's up to the professional at this point to stay within their scope. Like obviously personal trainers are going to look at an anterior pelvic tilt, hopefully without pain, right? They're just going to see an anterior pelvic tilt as maybe something that they should address during their warm up, and they're going to use corrective exercise. Manual therapy is not going to be within their scope. So hopefully they don't touch any of our manual therapy courses. Eventually, we will probably have to gate that content one step further.
So have a prerequisite or something.
Yeah, they'll probably have to give us their license number. The reason I'm trying not to do that at this point is because it's like, I don't want to have to charge licensed professionals more. The fact that we would have to take somebody's license number, add it to their account, and then create the programming to gate that content a little differently, we would end up having to charge licensed professionals a little bit more than we would charge personal trainers, for instance. And I'm just trying to not do that for complexity reasons. But, we kind of just expect everybody do what you do what you can do what you legally can do. Don't do what you can't do.
I like it.
That is important. We are definitely not suggesting that personal trainers address pain. And we tell personal trainers all the time that they should not be doing manual therapy. On the same token, licensed massage therapists aren't allowed to do joint mobilizations and manipulations. So, they can use all of our material up to joint mobilizations and manipulations. On the same token, a physical therapist, it's within their scope, but if it's not within their knowledge base to be training individuals and they've never really taken anybody through a deadlift, well, doing a 5-rep max deadlift today might not be the best idea. Maybe you need to practice that on your own, start bringing that into your sphere of practice before you go all out on some of our more performance related content.
Playing devil's advocate here, but I'm a certified personal trainer, or I'm a osteopath with 5 years of training. Why do I need extra training? Why do I need your course? Wouldn't I have already learnt this?
Well, okay, so I have to answer that in 2 ways. Number one, you don't. Okay, let's get very real about something. Continuing education at this point is just continuing education. If your state or your country or whatever, your province says that you need X number of credit hours to maintain your license or certification, we're trying to make that really easy for you. We're trying to ensure that all of our content counts towards continuing education credits, and we're trying to get pre-approval for all professions in as wide an area as we possibly can, which is a huge undertaking.
And is that across the world?
Well, right now it's mostly the United States. We have a couple things going on in Canada. We're working on the UK and Australia right now.
So you currently don't have, say, CEC points?
For UK and Australia?
Yeah.
UK is really, really close, but not yet. You'd have to petition. The accreditation thing gets really, really complicated really fast. And it is kind of a racket, right? You have to understand that for some organization in the UK might go, well, in order to be approved, we're going to charge you $250 per course per year. Well, by the end of this year, we're going to have 100 courses. So they want $25,000 from me to be pre-approved per year, right? I can only do stuff that makes sense. Now, most organizations aren't that bad, but there are a couple. We try to broaden as wide as we can. But kind of going back to your original question, we are providing a service, and we are 100% the biggest fan of the professional. So we're not only trying to create CECs and make all of our content available for CECs, meaning you can just read the content that you enjoy and then take a little test and get some credit for it. But on top of that, we only charge $19.99 a month. We don't charge for individual courses. You can take as many CECs as you want, and you can do it all from your phone with our app. So that part of the service we're making as easy as possible. So your question of, well, why do we need it? Well, some people are being forced into it. And continuing education is one of those things that most of us can't get away without doing from a professional level. But let's go back to more of an ethical side of things. You kind of should be continuing your education. Right? 5 years out of school, you don't remember everything you did while you were in school. And frankly, you're not getting better unless you're trying to learn. One of my favorite comebacks, because obviously we know that we get into these huge debates online, right? The online is kind of the haterverse, right? We got the troll campaigns. And these guys will come at me, I've been practicing for 20 years. What do you know? Well, I know this. If all you've been doing is practicing for 20 years, the same stuff that you've always been doing, and you haven't tried to learn anything, you're not really any better than you were at year 2.
Exactly.
Your years of experience matter very little to me unless it's 20 years of putting in a concerted effort to get better. Now, we as an organization, the Brookbush Institute, are trying to make that as easy as possible. Like, I am 100% again on the side of the professional. I am the professional's biggest fan. There is a reason I love education. There's a reason I do what I do. Now, as far as like our certifications and stuff like that, like I got hit up with that. Like, why should I get your certification? Look, the certification is just 3 letters to put after your name that signify you've put in our case, the human movement specialist is basically certifying that somebody passed 80 hours worth of coursework. We're hoping that shows employers that you're not somebody to pass up, that you're a serious person when it comes to your profession. That's all certification really is, right? And then you guys are looking back at me, hopefully as the CEO of this company, and going, and Brent, I'm going to work towards your certification, and I expect you to continue to work on your brand, right? The quality of your brand, the awareness of your brand, so that when employers do see HMS after my name, they recognize it, right? So that's the pact we're getting into with the certification.
Excellent. So I want to ask you about education in general. So not just in relation to your courses, but overall, how has education for people in the health and fitness industry changed?
Oh, wow. Okay, well.
Can you recall when you started?
It has and it hasn't, right? Man, the fitness industry and the health industry. So on the technology side, to go real quickly, right? We've gone from live workshops to book learning to online education, right? And online education is probably where most people are stuck. I think there's a lot of organizations that we're going to watch go by the wayside in the next 5 to 10 years because they're still trying to survive as a live workshop company. And I think those companies are going to disappear. And I think eventually it's all going to go towards a very mobile-centric education platform.
You yourself do run events as well.
We do, but I think what's going to end up happening is if you want to have live events, it's going to have to be live events in support of an online education platform. It's not going to work in the reverse, right? If your primary revenue is from workshops, you're either going to stagnate in the next 5 years or you're going to disappear altogether.
Is that just in relation to education, do you think? Or do you think that's just in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's education. It's everything, right? Everything's going mobile and online, and it's just the way of the world. So and that's why I said I could keep this conversation short, because all you have to do is look at like what's happening to the university system right now. And like they're starting to deal with it. Like more and more universities are creating what they call distance learning programs, which are essentially online learning programs. And a lot more of that, as the money gets bigger there, you're going to watch it continually get more convenient, continually to get more mobile, because they want to try to get more bodies in there, which is the thing. It's good from a capitalistic standpoint, and it's good for the student, right? If we make it more convenient, we get more students in the door. If we get more students in the door, universities can make more money, hopefully at a lower price. Hopefully it helps to combat the crazy inflation we've seen at the university level.
Okay, so that's the technology side of it.
Now, on the content side of it, we've been pushing towards an evidence-based practice. I think that's only half happening. I think you see guys like me who are very, very evidence-based, and we try to cite all available references for everything that we do. And then you have institutions that are like, it's not about the science, it's about high intensity, right? Or it's not about the science, it's about how I can get you a 6-pack in 6 weeks, which we know is just a total lie. So that's the tough part with the health and fitness world. You know, I think the licensed professions have a little leg up on that side, because at least with the licensed professions, there's a certain amount of policing that happens on what can be accredited as a course. The fitness industry is still in a pretty rough place. Popularity and social media and marketing really drives. Capitalism really drives without any check for quality of information.
Yeah, it's a good point. And not only that, but what about the students that come out of the training, come out of the education? How much of that do you see them putting into action? And I guess not in relation to your course, because I assume that you will say very much so. But, but in general, in other courses that you know about, without mentioning maybe any names, but I guess what I'm trying to say is let's take the personal training industry that you know well. If you were to look back, say 10, 20 years ago and go into, say, a gym and get a personal trainer to train you, do you feel that, say, 20 years ago compared to today, that the level of expertise of that personal trainer has changed quite a lot? Or would you still think that there's a way to go?
Yes and yes. I think the overall level of the personal trainer, if we're to look across the industry, has probably stepped up. There's a lot more like degreed personal trainers than there ever was in the past. Like when I started in the industry in 1998, like having a degree as a personal trainer was almost unheard of. And now it's fairly common. Like you walk into a gym and at least in the United States, at least where I am in New York, maybe I'm really biased being where I'm at, but I would say there's probably a couple trainers with a degree in just about every club I walk into. That's a good thing. That's a higher knowledge rate. I think the minimum standard hasn't changed much, unfortunately, which is why we still have a lot of trainers who sneak in and it's like Joe's six pack, right, with a great body, who really doesn't know how to do anything other than beat the heck out of people, not realizing that the biggest money in personal training is probably the 40 to 70-year-old baby boomer who's really looking for a good general health plan and maybe a little corrective exercise so they feel better when they're doing their functional activities. That's a tough one. It's tough to convince the kind of like younger, very active, very athletic, for lack of a better term, aggressive individual who wants to like get in there and like kick ass and they work out because it's intense and they love it. And to like look him in the face and go, yeah, but I mean, if you want to make money, 25-year-olds don't have a lot of it. So you're going to be probably pushed towards training a little older population that has a little bit more expendable income. And they just don't want their ass kicked every day. They don't want to walk in to their business meeting the next morning at 7:00, barely able to move.
How would you find a good personal trainer? For our listeners, if we walk into a gym, what sort of questions do we ask? How do we know that we're going to get someone that, is good?
Are you a member of BrentBrookbush.com? Okay, now obviously shameless plug there, but I will bring that back up in a second because it is an important point. I would say some sort of base level certification from one of the major institutions. I'd like to say that we're heading in the direction of being one of the larger institutions, but obviously a certification that is well respected. Right?
But I mean, that's going to be a given, isn't it? If they're working in a gym in Manhattan, they're going to have that.
In Manhattan, absolutely. That is not ubiquitous across the country.
Right.
There's nothing to actually say that they have to be certified. So, that gets a little sketchy when you get into more rural areas where maybe the health club doesn't have as much selection as they do in New York. My second question would be, what's their education game plan? Right? Which is where I said, are you a member of BrentBrookbush.com? I know if they're a member of our website, they're going to get, reminders on, hey, man, just take a course a month, take a course a week. Imagine how far you'll be at the end of the year, right? Like that's kind of our whole mission, right? Just do a little something all the time for education. If they don't want to do that, they don't like BrentBrookbush.com, that's fine. Just find something you like and have some sort of game plan to continue your education. Whether that's a workshop each quarter, maybe there's a different website that you're on. Hopefully it's an evidence-based website and not like some e-zine. But, those would be my first two big questions. And then, of course, we'd have to, I know there's some fitness managers out there right now who are probably like, yeah, this idealist educator over here. Obviously, the person has to be willing to talk to people on the floor, has to have some desire to sell. If they're one of these people who's like, I don't want to sell anything. Well, you're going to either tell me to my face right now that you're going to get over it or you're not getting a job.
And what about from a client perspective? If you're actually personally looking for someone that you think will be a good trainer for you, what other things would you be looking at or asking the PT?
A good trainer for me personally?
Well, as an example, maybe not you.
Yeah, I was about to say, I might be a little rough. I'm a little picky, but obviously you want to try to match people up on a few different factors. You want to make sure that the skill centers match and you want to make sure schedules match because that always becomes a problem. Like if you have somebody who's more of an evening trainer and the client that you just handed them wants 5:30 a.m., like that's never going to work. You want to try to match personalities. As much as I would love to say everything is really, really skill-based, we do have to be realistic that personalities do matter.
Yeah, and what about background? Would you consider the personal trainer's background?
As far as what?
Well, not just education, but experience in different areas, perhaps.
I would have to say that would be really up in the air. It depends. I think there's a lot of business books out there, and I do read a ton. They always talk about hire for attitude, you can teach skill. When it comes to like personal training, and if you're developing a personal training department, that becomes very true. a young personal trainer who loves education, digs all of it, just loves the science, is really eager, wants to get out there, and is 24 years old with, next to no life experience, is still going to be a better pick than the person with 15 years experience who wants to come in and tell you how you're going to do your job as the manager, who's going to tell other trainers what they're doing wrong, who's going to assert themselves as a pseudo expert, and not play team ball. Like, those are the people, although they look good on paper, because maybe they have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and 15 years and experience as a manager, and they have all this stuff on their resume. They're the type of person who, if their attitude isn't right, they'll come in and crush your team. And you can't let that happen either.
Excellent. That's really good advice. And Brent, I guess moving forward with education, say at your institute, are you looking at expanding your courses in terms of variety?
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was a little rough with productivity. When I say a little rough with productivity, we only published 20 courses. The year before that, we published 40. So last year, we spent a lot of time building infrastructure and trying to add a lot of systems to how we train and develop writers. So that took a little bit away. And then, of course, I personally took on 3 very, very large projects. So we ended up actually publishing the same amount of words we did the year before last year, but it ended up being clustered into less number of courses. This year, we probably will publish anywhere from 30 to 50 new courses. We have plans on getting way more involved on the strength side. I have to build out, I already have all the content created. Now I have to build out probably a half dozen to a dozen manual therapy courses that we're ready to launch. So those will be coming. So it's really on both ends of the spectrum there, right? We have the licensed professionals who are going to get manual therapy from us this year. We have personal trainers who are going to see a lot more on the performance side from us this year. And then, of course, we have some partnerships that we're looking at maybe creating some more specific modality coursework with, which now that we've really built out our foundation with anatomy and these predictive models of postural dysfunction, and we're building out the exercise physiology, it's going to be nice for us to be able to go, okay, instrument-assisted soft tissue mobilization, like, we're going to go ahead and build out some courses for that. Or our kinesio taping. Well, kinesio is a brand, but, the elastic taping techniques, we're going to have a course on that. And, we've talked a little bit about maybe doing like a blood flow restriction training, which is like this huge tidal wave that's coming through the physical therapy industry. So
that would be awesome. Okay, so that sounds great. And so what about if you wanted to get into becoming a personal trainer or something like that? Do you offer courses for the absolute beginner?
Absolutely.
Okay, so for example, the one that everyone knows of in America is the NASM course that you were working for. You now no longer work for them, but you offer an equivalent course?
So we don't offer a certified personal trainer certification at this point.
Okay.
But we offer a lot of stuff that probably would help you pass. Because I was part of the NASM family, and I still am part of the NASM family, right? I just kind of moved out. Doesn't mean I'm still not part of the family, but we have a lot of people going for that NASM certification who find out about me. And then they start working through like our Introduction to Functional Anatomy course, because obviously that's where a lot of people get really, really stumped. And my entire 16-hour Introduction to Functional Anatomy course that literally starts with, here's what anatomical position is. Here's what the planes of motion are. Here's what a joint action is. It literally starts that basic and then takes you through the major movers of the body, right? Takes you all the way through that in a very conceptual, interactive way. All those videos are already up on the website, and it's all included in that $19.99 a month package. So every time I look at our website, I just think to myself, I have no idea why everybody on the planet hasn't signed up for this yet.
Well, to be honest, I agree. And I'm actually about to sign up because I'll give you an example of in Australia what our options are. So as a, say, personal trainer, you have to get a certain amount of SEC points. Plus, you just want to educate yourself. So you can join, there's a couple of different, I was going to say equivalent to yours, but they're nowhere near equivalent. So what they are is you pay, say, $130 a year and you get, say, 6 points, maybe maximum, for free that you can do these courses. It gives you about 6 courses, but you need another 20 points on top of that. So then you have to pay anywhere between $100 and, say, $2,000 for a course to get your SEC points. So I think your average spend would be about maybe $1,000 over 2 years to get the amount of SEC points that you need through their courses, but you pay for each one. It's not unlimited courses for free.
I think that's absolutely backwards. That was part of my thing from the get-go is why would you punish somebody for more education?
Well,
We're
that's
just going to set the price at $19.99 and you can take as much as you want. The other thing that does, which is huge for the student, is you can take as long as you want on any one course. And it's not like at $19.99 a month, you're getting like stabbed in the back every month that it hits your credit card, right? Like at $19.99 a month, if it took you an extra month to get through something, which I'll bring up this next point here in a second, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. And then you got to realize all of our courses are only 1 to 4 hours long, right? So there is no large end exam ever. To me, the large end exam, all it promotes is the cram it and forget it model.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Look, that sounds really appealing. And I think you should get onto the SEC points as soon as possible because I know everyone in Australia and the UK will definitely sign up.
I mean, anybody who's out there in whatever country that you're in, like anything you can find out. I mean, realize like we're still a fairly small company. Not even fairly small. We are a small company. Let me totally take this back down. We are a small company growing very rapidly. So we really do our best to keep up. And like I said, we are huge fans of everybody. If there is an organization that you want us to look into and you can do a little digging for us, like, hey, I'm in the UK. I just looked at reps. Reps said that they're X amount per course. Here's the number you need to call or here's the email. And you shoot that over to my email address. I will send that immediately to our Cynthia, who's our director of instructional design and accreditation, and make sure that she starts doing the discovery work on that. And we put it in our queue. And we'll let you know if we're not going to do it, we'll let you know why. Usually it's because it's like, well, they want $30,000 a year or something ridiculous. Like a lot of these accrediting companies, unfortunately, still have a model that was designed to certify like a 16 or 20 hour weekend workshop. And they charge kind of in a way that would make you think that they're thinking about you having 2 to 4 live workshops as a company. They're not really set up to do 100 online modules. So they end up charging the same per course. They have this outdated payment model where it's like, well, yeah, $250 a course makes sense for a 16-hour weekend workshop. It doesn't make sense to charge me $250 for a 1-hour online asynchronous thing that I'm not charging individually for.
And incidentally, just to add to that, it's actually the content too that is presented in a fairly backward way, if you ask me. Definitely not an option to do anything on the phone. Very few videos. And there's a lot of companies out there doing it, but very backward. So it's sort of nice, reassuring to see that you're staying up, with technology, which is awesome. But Brent, before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience or maybe a tip?
A tip. Okay, just keep getting educated. That is the only tip. I mean, look, if you do it through us, I'm going to work my ass off to make sure that the content that you love is up there, that you're going to get credit for it for your CECs, that it's also going to count towards a certification, a marquee certification with us, right? Realize that those are all the same thing on our website. So the courses you take for your CECs also count to your HMS certificate. And we're already working on trying to get those also to count, at least some of those courses, to count as assignments for graduate coursework at Concordia University in Chicago.
Wow.
Which is a distance learning education. We're going to make sure we get you as much credit as possible.
Awesome.
Because we think that's the way it should be. But without all that, you have to pick something. You have to keep getting educated. Nobody just gets divinely inspired with evidence-based information to optimize their training, right? Not to mention, if you don't get educated, you're going to get bored. It just sucks when you have nothing new to work with.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you, Brent. And look, one final question for you. Slightly random, but we ask all our guests on the show. Do you have a tattoo?
I have no tattoos. Maybe it's my commitment issues. I just can't think of anything that I'd want tattooed on my body.
For a long period of time.
Maybe the Brookbush Institute logo. I don't know. That might be too much, right? Like that might be a little bit too much company pride at that point or something. I don't know.
So just lack of commitment issues, you think?
Yeah. Do you have a tattoo?
You'll have to listen to one of the shows where I talk about it.
Not going to give any details for the other show.
Exactly. Brent, thanks again for coming on, and we'll put in the show notes your website and any ways in which we can contact you. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ally.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.